Here we go, that's better. So next up is Lizzie, who's our first lived experience speaker. And Lizzie, well, I'll let her explain, but she has congenital TTP. Do you want a microphone?
No, I'm fine, thank
You're
you. Absolutely fine without one. So I'm Lizzie, I'm 30 years old, I'm from Saffron Walden in Essex. I was diagnosed with congenital TTP at 25 when I was 30 weeks pregnant with my son. I started feeling very, very sick for 2 weeks. I'd had pretty horrendous morning sickness anyway, but I ran a riding school and a livery yard, so I was still riding 6 horses a day right up until about 30 weeks. I saw 3 GPs in that time. I was told I had swine flu on one of them. And I mean, I don't even know when swine flu was eradicated, but a very long time ago. I was given Diorolite and sent on my way. I couldn't even keep water down. I then started to get the track bruising up my legs. And on the 3rd visit to the GP, she said, you know, this isn't great. We'll send you to the Rosie, the maternity ward at Addenbrooke's, and let them decide. And that was the last thing I remember from going into hospital. So I was incredibly lucky that I was diagnosed at Addenbrooke's. I didn't have to be transferred anywhere. Will Thomas was involved 12 hours after I was seen in hospital. So I was put straight on plasmapheresis, which, as a person who has the worst needle phobia, it was a pretty traumatic experience. I didn't give consent to have the line put in my neck. I wouldn't let anyone near me, and I was basically told, if a nurse does not give permission, you will die on this bed. So I was still adamant. I was like, you're not going near me. And in the end, I was basically pinned down and had a line put in my neck. I was told that it was probably a congenital TTP, going back over my records from when I was younger. But at that time, it took 6 to 8 weeks to diagnose. So I spent 6 weeks in hospital with my son. He was in NICU for 2 and then discharged onto the ward with me. I enjoyed every second of my hospital stay and actually struggled more leaving the hospital. I wanted to get home to my animals and just be at home. But the thought of leaving that safe space where my son was very well looked after, I was very well looked after, was absolutely terrifying. And I think I cried more leaving the hospital than having the diagnosis. I didn't really know what had gone on. I was completely away with the fairies. And it was actually one of the people that used to work for me said to me when I left, did you know how close you were to death? And I was like, no, I didn't actually. So coming out of hospital, I was then on, I think I had 3 treatments a week at Addenbrooke's because my platelets just kind of wouldn't come above 130. And once I got the congenital TTP diagnosis, I was transferred to UCL to start the trial for the recombinant ADAMPs. So I did 6 months of plasma there before I could then go on to the trial, and I've been having the trial drug ever since. So 4.5 years of having the recombinant ADAMPs. Having my diagnosis made a lot of sense of the health problems I'd had. Since I was 14 years old, I missed my whole GCSE year of school with chronic migraines. I didn't get out of bed for 9 months. And I was basically, you know, put down as the lazy child that didn't want to go to school. I went to sixth form college, but I had to leave early because I wasn't allowed a shortened timetable. And kind of knowing that this was not all in my head, I was told that I had depression. I was given everything under the sun, but not a formal diagnosis until I was 25. It makes me quite angry now thinking about it, you know, looking back at my teenage years, they were basically stolen from me because I didn't get out of bed. And it just, I lost a lot of friends because of it, because they didn't understand. And now I wish I could go back and kind of say, do you know what? I had a really horrible time, and now I've got this diagnosis. I can carry on with my life. I've not had a migraine, really, a proper one, since I was diagnosed at 25 years old. So that's been the most life-changing thing for me. Imagine having them every day, lasting several hours of not being able to see, and now not having one at all has completely changed my life. So when I was told about TTP, it took me a long time to understand what it was. I think I was very much in denial, and the thing that was the turning point for me was I went to the TTP conference that was in London, and I had made every excuse not to go to London for treatment. If the trains weren't working, I just wouldn't turn up. And I said to Marie Scully, I said, look, what would happen if I didn't have treatment anymore? I managed to survive 25 years. And she just basically said, well, we can't guarantee that you would survive. And I think at that point, I thought, I've got a child that is, he's depending on me. I need to get a grip of myself here. The constant, I've got to skip through. The constant tiredness that I feel now is probably the biggest draining point of my life, and the fact that no one understands. My poor mum was the only one in hospital with me. She spent, 12 hours a day in hospital with me, and she's probably the only one that fully understands it. Obviously, the fact that I'm still absolutely terrified of needles. The nurses are amazing, and they put up with a lot of dramatic from me. I had a Hickman line for a long time because I wouldn't let them put a needle in me. So each week that I have treatment, I've kind of got my head around that it can go in my right arm. I've got one vein that they can access, and if they don't get it in that vein, that's it, game over. And, I'm 5 years and I still am that dramatic about it. And it's the fact that I've had the realisation that this is the rest of my life. Every week, for the rest of my life, I've got to have a needle put in my arm to survive. So practical things with this. I had a yard before I was diagnosed. I then had to give that up. I sold the yard, sold all the horses, and went and worked for a GP surgery. I then left the GP surgery, and I now work part-time at a vet's. So, I can't work full-time hours, obviously aside the fact that I have a 5-year-old child that depends on me, because I have to go for treatment every week. Obviously, as I'm a single parent, so this is doubly hard in logistics. The one thing I will say is that a lot of people were saying, how do I explain this to my child? So my son Theo is 5. He comes regularly with me for treatment. He sits next to me. He has no needle phobia whatsoever. He thinks it's great fun that mummy has needles stuck in her arm and watches it go. And I think having him part of that journey with me, Marie has been incredible with him. She lets him sit there. He puts the flush through my arm at my absolute horror. And I just say to him, mummy has poorly blood. That's all he understands. He knows I have to have treatment each week, and he gets that. So kind of a message of optimism. So I'm determined to live life to the fullest despite being permanently tired. I have a part-time job that I love. I have an amazing son and family. Recombinant Adams has been my absolute lifesaver. Although I hate needles, it takes 5 seconds to push it through my arm. I no longer have to sit there for 6 hours having plasma each week. And the support that I've had from Marie, all the staff at UCL, and now Adam Brooks, because I've been transferred back to Adam Brooks. And it's just been, we've come a long way from 5-6 years ago that I was diagnosed. And, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's rubbish. is awful, you know, and it feels very alone because you can't walk down the street and think, oh, there's somebody that also is going through what I am. But always reach out on the Facebook page. There's always somebody there that will answer. Even if it's a really stupid question, someone will answer it. And, you know, we keep fighting.